in 8 months. From January to August, Donald Trump has created the worst economy here in the United States since we were in something that students are now learning about in history class called the Great Recession.
That outburst captures a mood spreading across America as key economic indicators have begun to nosedive at a staggering pace. The economy is being ripped apart by a series of short-sighted and chaotic policies, and the damage is measurable in hard numbers. The August jobs report revealed that the U.S. added a mere 22,000 jobs, a collapse so severe it set off alarm bells across financial circles. But the real shock came in early April 2025, when the administration unveiled a barrage of reckless, reciprocal tariffs. That move ignited what analysts now call a historic bloodbath in global financial markets. A detailed breakdown from LSEG laid bare the scale of the devastation. On April 2, 2025, Trump abruptly announced a wave of steep, indiscriminate, reciprocal tariffs, unleashing a storm unlike anything global financial markets had seen before. Stocks and bonds across the world went through a historic bloodbath, and no one was spared. Almost immediately, U.S. equities suffered their sharpest one-day decline since the COVID-19 outbreak in 2020. The Dow Jones Industrial Average alone lost more than $6 trillion in market value in a single session. The plunge dragged both the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq down more than 20% from their December 2024 peaks, officially tipping them into bear market territory. Asian markets, including Taiwan and Hong Kong, saw single-day losses exceeding 10%. The combined market capitalization of America's 7 largest tech giants evaporated by over $2 trillion. $2 trillion in just 1 week. Panic spread with stunning speed, and even U.S. Treasuries, the supposed last safe haven, failed to provide cover. Yields spiked while prices collapsed, signaling that investors no longer trusted the security of America's public debt. In the end, this crisis forced Trump to delay enforcement of his tariff plan by 90 days. But make no mistake, the collapse was not an accident. It was the direct outcome of a deliberate policy branded America First, legitimized under a sweeping national emergency declaration. I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, find that fundamental conditions, including the lack of reciprocity in our bilateral trade relationships, constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and economy of the United States. I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with this threat. With that proclamation, a brutal wave of tariffs was imposed, and it unleashed some of the most destabilizing economic shocks America had faced in over a decade. The arbitrary imposition of tariffs poisoned the business climate. Chaos didn't stop at the stock market. More alarming still, the U.S. Treasury market, long considered the ultimate safe haven during turmoil, suffered a fierce sell-off. Bond yields spiked, a clear signal that investors were losing confidence in America's economic stability. This volatility created an atmosphere of extreme uncertainty for businesses, leaving CEOs and workers alike grappling with a landscape that felt more hostile than at any point since the financial crisis.
They're on again, they're off again, they're up, they're down, they're big, they're small, they're kind of in the middle. We don't know what he's going to do on any given day. It all depends on his mood when he wakes up in the morning.
In this climate of chaos, businesses cannot expand and certainly cannot create sustainable jobs. Instead, they're forced to retreat, cut costs, and lay off workers in preparation for a government-induced recession. The impact on the labor market was immediate. The economic dominoes had begun to fall, and the first to be crushed were American workers.
All because we're dealing with the dumbest president to ever serve in the Oval Office, who doesn't understand how tariffs work, he doesn't understand how the economy works.
The August jobs report painted a bleak picture. According to the New York Post, the economy added just 22,000 jobs, an astonishingly low figure and a steep drop from 73,000 the previous month. The overall unemployment rate edged up to 4.3%, but that headline number hid far deeper problems. Core industries like manufacturing and construction had already begun cutting workers. Revised data even showed the economy actually lost 13,000 jobs in June, marking the first monthly decline since the pandemic. Manufacturing, the very centerpiece of those grand promises to make America great again, is now on life support. In August alone, 12,000 manufacturing jobs vanished. The auto industry, long a symbol of American industrial strength, lost 7,300 jobs. Construction shed another 7,000. Even research and scientific development, the backbone of future innovation and competitiveness, saw 3,600 jobs disappear. Meanwhile, American households are under a double assault, falling or uncertain incomes on one side, and rising living costs on the other. Inflation, fueled by higher import prices from tariffs, is steadily eroding consumer purchasing power. Prices for everyday essentials, especially groceries, have climbed sharply. The administration's promises to tame inflation and make life more affordable now ring hollow when stacked against reality.
Starting on day one, we will end inflation and make America affordable again.
When I win, I will immediately bring prices down.
Ironically, the very policy sold as a fix for America's trade deficit has only made it worse. Data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, BEA, show that the U.S. trade deficit in goods and services ballooned to a record $78.3 billion in July 2025. Strikingly, deficits with countries like Mexico and Vietnam surged. Clear evidence that supply chains are simply rerouting around tariffs rather than returning to U.S. soil as promised. What this proves is a comprehensive policy failure. None of the stated goals have been achieved, while American consumers and businesses are left to shoulder the full cost. As America's economic troubles became impossible to ignore, public patience ran out. Confidence in the administration's ability to manage the economy collapsed, triggering a full-blown political credibility crisis. Support for the president, especially on economic issues, has gone into freefall. An NBC poll laid bare this bitter reality, revealing the depth and breadth of voter dissatisfaction.
Specifically, inflation and the cost of living, Trump scores even worse. 39% approve, 61% disapprove. And more than 1 in 5 Americans, 21% surveyed, said that they felt furious with the Trump administration's actions since January.
But this dissatisfaction wasn't just numbers on a poll. It spilled into the streets. Across the country, from the East Coast to the West Coast, massive protests erupted, drawing thousands, then tens of thousands of furious citizens. Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and Chicago became the epicenters of a growing resistance movement. People weren't only protesting harmful economic policies, they were also rejecting the administration's tightening security measures and hardline immigration stance. Increasingly, the public saw these actions not as isolated issues, but as pieces of a broader agenda designed to consolidate power and distract from economic failure. The demonstrations grew into an organized movement, a reflection of deep fractures in society and a complete erosion of trust in America's institutions. The message from the protesters was unmistakable. They weren't just demanding policy changes. They were redefining what security and safety should mean for the nation. While the administration painted a picture of a country besieged by external threats, one that required military and police presence to maintain order, people in the streets put forward a very different definition of safety. For them, safety did not come from armored vehicles or armed soldiers. Real security came from the most basic pillars of a civilized society.
And this does not keep us safe. Housing, jobs, health care keep us safe. Care, not cops.
That's right.
This so-called crime crisis manufactured by this orange man and this administration is nothing more than justification for sending armed troops and federal agents into our neighborhoods and spreading harmful lies about our people and our youth.
Americans are no longer persuaded by fiery speeches about border security or military strength. When they're fighting a survival battle in their own hometowns, the presence of federal forces on city streets has only deepened the sense of being occupied and oppressed by their own government. The use of armed federal units against protesters is seen as a blatant attempt to divert attention from the true root of social unrest, an economy in freefall. For American families, this crisis has a painfully concrete face. It's the bitter humiliation of standing at the checkout counter and being forced to put items back, because grocery prices have soared to absurd levels. Tariffs on imported goods have turned every weekly trip to the store into a stressful exercise in household budgeting. It's the helplessness of looking at a savings account balance and realizing its value is being eaten away day by a weakening dollar. Meanwhile, the world is not waiting for the United States to fix its problems. Competitors and trading partners, initially stunned by Washington's actions, quickly adapted. China responded with tariffs of its own, making clear it would not be easily subdued. Other nations, sensing both a power vacuum and an economic opening, began positioning themselves as alternative manufacturing hubs, attracting investment and strengthening their roles in global supply chains. Today, the U.S. Census Bureau and the Bureau of Economic Analysis reported that America's trade deficit in goods and services hit $78.3 billion in July, a sharp increase from the revised $59.1 billion in June. From January through July, the deficit ballooned by $154.3 billion, a staggering 30.9% jump compared to the same period in 2024. The July breakdown shows deficits of $16.6 billion with Mexico, $16.1 billion with Vietnam, $14.7 billion with China, and $13.5 billion with Taiwan. These numbers expose a truth that can't be ignored. While American families struggle, other countries are adjusting and, in some cases, profiting from the chaos. The fact that U.S. trade deficits with Mexico and Vietnam now exceed those with China shows the trade war is not bringing manufacturing back home. It's simply shifting supply chains elsewhere. In the end, the administration's failure is summed up perfectly in this observation.
We know politics can be really lethal on the economy in general, but when you made this your core promise and your policies are having the direct opposite effect that you said they were going to, yeah, people are going to be pretty upset.
The combination of what critics call blatant incompetence and total indifference to what happens to the country has driven America into its most severe economic crisis in more than a decade. Trump's policies have been a comprehensive failure, unleashing financial chaos, harming working families, and weakening America's global standing. The legacy he leaves behind is not a nation made great again, but a nation wounded, divided, and teetering on the edge of a self-inflicted economic recession.